From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sonia Gray. The 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly has entered its third day with more high-level meetings expected. The Security Council is set to hold a meeting on non-proliferation with a focus on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The United Nations and European Union will launch their Spotlight initiative on ending violence against women and girls in Latin America, and finally, the general debate will continue. Among today's speakers will be the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness, and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. On Wednesday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro addressed the United Nations General Assembly. Maduro said Venezuela has become the victim of diplomatic and economic attacks. He also said that the U.S. wants to dominate the world and called such a stance unhealthy for global peace. The president once again restated his willingness to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump.
I learned that some journalists had asked President Donald Trump if he was willing to meet with Maduro. That's how they call me. Nicolás Maduro, the president of Venezuela. Apparently, President Donald Trump said in one of his answers today that if this would help Venezuela, he was willing to do so. Well, from this stage, I say and I ratify, regardless of the big historical differences that we've had, regardless of the differences in ideology, regardless of our social differences, I am a worker, a bus driver, a man of the people. I'm not a billionaire. Regardless of all these differences that could be considered as enormous, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, is willing, I am willing, to shake the hands of President of the United States and speak with him about the differences of our countries and the matters of our region, and so they be considered. This is what I believe.
Another topic President Maduro touched upon was the ongoing economic blockade of Venezuela.
To think about the political control in Venezuela. Today, Venezuela is the victim of a continuous attack. On the economic side, Venezuela has been under, during the last 2 years, to a group of measures, unilateral measures, fully legal, of economic persecution, of economic blockade. We have been prevented from using the international exchange currency, the dollar, and their positions of domination from the authorities of the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. Today, Venezuela cannot trade internationally with dollars. The world was aware of this, that Venezuela is persecuted economically, commercially, financially. Today, Venezuela is under mechanisms of economic sanction which are illegal, unilateral.
President of El Salvador, Salvador Sanchez Serran, also rejected the blockade imposed by the United States on Venezuela and Cuba during his speech to the General Assembly.
For the international community to progress with a firm step towards developing unilateral measures should end, such as the unjust and anachronic economic, financial and commercial blockade imposed on Cuba by the United States. This measure must end because it generates incalculable damage to the Cuban people. The economic blockade against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which affect its international payment and buying goods and service, which damage the living conditions of the population. We respect the self-determination and the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people, and we reject any external interference and threat of military intervention.
as did Bolivia's President Evo Morales.
Latin America
rejects in a clear manner the attempts to militarily intervene in Venezuela. Venezuela's problems should be resolved by Venezuelans. The United States should withdraw its illegal and unilateral measures that represent one of the causes of the economic situation of that country.
Turning his focus on internal matters, President Morales called for a peaceful solution to the maritime dispute between Bolivia and Chile. Finally, he said climate change and inequality are two of the biggest threats in today's world. And just before his address to the UNGA, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro met with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. They spoke about the solidarity Venezuela shares with Russia, and in particular with President Vladimir Putin. Another point of discussion was the strengthening of common ties and goals of both nations. The Russian foreign minister reiterated his country's support for the Iran nuclear deal.
Unilateral withdrawal of the United States from this document poses a serious threat to the non-proliferation regime. Especially, as many people here have stressed before, Tehran clearly follows its obligations under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Russia is convinced of the need to maintain the Joint Comprehensive Action Plan, which we are now actively working together with Iran, China and the European Union.
Another one of President Maduro's meeting ahead of his address was with the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. Both leaders agreed to strengthen their nation's cooperation ties and to defend a multipolar world as a guarantor of peace. The meeting comes just a year after both leaders met in Kyrgyzstan during the summit of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Return to the Homeland Plan implemented by the Venezuelan government has received well over 20,000 applications. This time, 93 Venezuelans living in Peru are going home.
3 Venezuelans aboard the fourth flight from Peru strongly condemned the racism they suffered. One of them is Luis Escalona. He lived in the capital of Peru for 7 months with his family, wanting a better life. But this is how he summarizes his experience.
One of
the first things was the xenophobia. I do not know how to explain it. It has been bad for every Venezuelan over there. That is one of the reasons we decided to return.
He says he's going back empty-handed, but is excited to go back to Venezuela. He talked to us about the labor exploitation he suffered.
They do not care about giving you jobs. They are only exploiting us. A Peruvian earns from $90 to $120, and they pay Venezuelans about $50 or $60.
And what is your opinion about their hospitals and medicine access?
I went once to a hospital to ask about my pregnant wife, and it's really expensive. I couldn't afford it, and they didn't give me a raise.
For the first time in ages, this Venezuelan family is back home. Luis lives in Los Teques, state of Miranda, just an hour away from Caracas, and this is how we were welcomed.
We're tired and we're sleepy, but we are glad we are here in Venezuela.
His stay in Peru has left him scarred.
They paid me the bare minimum, and I had to go beg for my money, and they told me come back later. I don't have the money right now.
They also feel they have a lucky escape from the abuse suffered at the hands of the media.
We received abuse through the media and through social media.
They spoke about the Peruvian media coverage of the Homeland Plan.
They said they would take everything, our belts, shoes, and when we arrive, they would tear our social security card. I don't think they would do that, I thought to myself.
They're still united as a family. Now in the comfort of their own home, the attitude is one of perseverance. They hope for a new start in the country.
The relatives of the 43 missing students who disappeared 4 years ago in Mexico took to the streets on Wednesday on the 4th anniversary of the suspected massacre. Before the protest, President-elect Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador met with the families of the students and promised to solve the case. 4 years on, they still don't know what happened to their loved ones.
During the campaign, I made a commitment to help clarify everything that happened in the unfortunate case of the disappearance of the young students at Ayotzinapa. And we are going to comply, where we are going to request the judiciary power, with all due respect because it is an independent power, to reopen the case so that an investigative commission can be set up.
We hope that Andrés Manuel López Obrador will fulfill the commitment he made today. He wants the truth. This is very tiring. 4 years have passed, and we don't know anything about our comrades.
The International Monetary Fund has increased the loan previously approved for Argentina to $57 billion. The IMF announced a new agreement adding an additional $7 billion to the original loan. An early release of $19 billion will happen between now and the end of 2019. Thousands of people in Argentina have been on strike this week against the government's policies and the deal with the IMF.
A central objective of Argentina's plan and a key priority for the IMF remains protecting the most vulnerable people in Argentina during this economic transition. In this context, I am pleased to see a firm commitment to the expansion of social protections under the authorities' strengthened policy plan. The fund remains fully committed to helping Argentina tackle the challenges that it faces. It is the largest ever program that the IMF is putting together.
Our correspondent in Buenos Aires explains the new deal.
This afternoon, there was a new development of the IMF's negotiation and an extension of credit. The announcement was delivered at the meeting in New York by the head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, and Argentine Finance Minister Nicolás Dujovne. The reality is that now more than $57 billion will be given by the IMF this year and $22.4 billion in 2019. Argentina is headed towards an electoral campaign, and President Mauricio Macri is facing strong criticisms and declining approval. Argentina continues to enter into higher debts as the country's economic challenge deepens. If the government begins to respond to the demands of the IMF moving forward, the backlash by the citizens on social, economic, and political levels will increase. In particular, as the most vulnerable sectors of the country begin to see more cuts and a greater recession. Argentina has recently faced increased uncertainty with everything from protests to unrest to other forms of demonstrations. This will continue if things don't change, according to the workers' unions.
Argentina's central bank chief has announced a new stage in its handling of the country's struggling economy.
It's a new stage where we are leaving behind banking interventions as the main tool to limit nominal variability of the economy and returning to a focus on monetary policy as an anchor.
And if the 2019 budget is approved in Argentina, retirees and working people will have to pay more in taxes, which will hurt their pockets even more.
The proposed 2019 budget presented to the government by the finance minister has suggested that workers and retirees will have to pay more taxes. The government says this strategy will help decrease the fiscal deficit.
This government is structuring all of its moves around taking away the earnings of working people, the retirees, the vulnerable. Now they have introduced a budget that includes the auction of the National Pension Fund, FtS, that we all know is the fundamental base for ensuring the right to a quality of life for retirees.
The initiative will be presented and debated in the Deputies' Chamber, defending the intent to remove exemptions, not only affecting state workers with special status, but also retirees. Despite the tense situation, unions and retirees are not giving up the fight.
There wasn't a crisis for 8 years because we supported the economy with the only authentic capital us Argentinians have. The savings from the working people, our money, the retirees and active workers' money. This functioning cycle teaches us that we can live well without having to kneel to the IMF, as this government has done.
Tax specialists say that in case the document is approved, the tax would be enough to cover representation, transportation, and travel expenses, among some others.
Fellow colleagues, you have taught us how to love the country. You, the retirees, the long-term workers, taught the teachers that are teaching these students to defend the country and the pension planning system. Thank you for that. I want to tell you that you are not alone. The biggest Argentinian convoy was made by you.
For experts, the budget proposes to repeal exemptions that have certain public administration functions. This is exacerbating an existing crisis that grandfathers and grandmothers across the country are already living, because most of them not only collect the minimum pension, but also suffer a lack of access to medicine via the social organizations that they're a part of.
At least 3.4 million Brazilians have been barred from voting in the presidential elections of October 7, following a decision by the Supreme Federal Tribunal on Wednesday. The judges accepted the cancellation of voting rights for people who did not submit to biometric registration within the established period. The Socialist Party of Brazil tried to prevent people from being disqualified, but their attempt was ultimately rejected. Most of the affected voters are from the poorest parts of the country. And a court in Honduras has rejected the petition from Berta Cáceres' family to dismiss the judges in the trial for her murder. The family had accused the judges of irregularities and a lack of impartiality in their handling of the case. The indigenous leader and feminist activist Berta Cáceres was murdered in 2016. Tens of thousands of public sector workers are protesting against proposed tax reform in Costa Rica. Entering their third week of indefinite strikes, protesters marched in the capital San Jose, demanding that Congress drop the proposal. However, the government says that if it doesn't implement the reform, then the fiscal deficit is set to reach 7.2% this year.
We pay taxes every day and they want to add more. So we're here in the streets. We're not lazy. We're defending our rights because we deserve them. Because we are the workers that hold this country together.
Barbados is bracing for the arrival of Tropical Storm Kirk, but the storm isn't strong enough for the mandatory closure of offices, so the government has advised that it is business as usual across the island. The Met Office, however, advises heavy rains and floods may be expected, so citizens should keep monitoring advisory services for updates. Ahead of his speech at the UNGA General Debate, Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness paid special tribute to an artist for a portrait of him. Michael Escoffery presented Holness with the painting at the Jamaican Consulate in New York. In return for the gift, the PM thanked him dearly and lauded his skills as an artist on his Twitter page. We'll take a short break now. World News is next.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has arrived in Berlin to meet the German Chancellor Angela Merkel in a bid to restore relations. Following a failed coup against Erdogan 2 years ago, relations between the two countries declined. And after a mass crackdown on opposition forces, including German nationals, Germany also wants to improve relations with Turkey to stop the flow of migrants into Europe. Thousands of Erdogan critics are expected to protest over the lack of press freedom and human rights violations in Turkey. Beijing has issued a strong response to President Donald Trump's accusations of Chinese meddling in the upcoming midterm elections in the United States. Yesterday, at the United Nations, Trump alleged that the Chinese are trying to sabotage the Republican Party's upcoming elections. So today, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs strongly urged the U.S. to stop its groundless accusations and slander.
We advise the United States to stop its groundless accusation and slander against China and to stop its wrong words and deeds that harm the relations between the two countries and the fundamental interests of the two peoples.
2 Chilean tourists accused of murdering a Malaysian man in Kuala Lumpur are back in court. In 2017, Felipe Osaya Diaz and Fernando Candia allegedly killed the man in an act of self-defense when he tried to rob them in a hotel lobby. They pleaded not guilty at a previous trial held August 2018, but could potentially face the death penalty if convicted in this new trial. Palestinian protesters demonstrated in front of the Erez crossing between Israel and the Gaza Strip over the reported closure of the border. Being the only land-based crossing for people between the two territories, Erez was reportedly shut down by the Israeli government without any notice. Israeli forces used tear gas against the Palestinian protesters, who in response set tires on fire while evacuating their injured companions. Now let's have a look at today's other stories from around the world.
The streets of Tripoli, Libya have been flooded on the day rival militias signed a new ceasefire. One resident blames the poor state of the infrastructure for the scale of the flooding and accused the United Nations-backed government of incompetence.
We are in Ras Hassan. It was raining today, thank God. And we hope it brings peace to the country. The whole street was flooded and houses were damaged. This was all because of bad infrastructure, since the government is not paying any attention to the situation. The electricity is being cut and people don't have money to buy food. People's houses are damaged and no one from the government has come.
A former New York mayor is using his wealth to campaign against climate change and to influence the US Congress towards the Democrats. In an interview at the One Planet Summit, Michael Bloomberg said that corporations can take the lead when it comes to meeting challenges of global warming.
But we are making progress. China's making some progress. Throughout Europe, they're making some progress. In the end, it's not governments that drive behavior. It's capitalism. It's the economic interest of companies who want to be environmentally friendly because their employees want it, their investors want it, their customers want it.
Heavy rainfall in China has expanded its largest waterfall, attracting a rush of tourists. The Huanggushu waterfall was transformed into a giant dragon, according to local reports, creating quite a scene worth plenty of photo opportunities for tourists.
And finally, an incredible moment was caught on camera in Kaikoura, New Zealand, when a seal slapped a canoe with an octopus. The video shows the seal coming out of the water, octopus in mouth, swinging the mollusk towards the unsuspecting canoe and then slipping back into the water. Great shots. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telus4tv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.
Enjoy our programming from